At 18, I thought my biggest fear was failing my college exams. Turns out, it was being sold to the Mafia. My name is Isabella Rossi, and on my 18th birthday, I didn't get candles or gifts. I got an envelope, sealed in red wax. Inside was a single piece of paper, and 3 words that ended my world. Debt transferred, collectible. My father, the man who used to kiss my forehead and promised to protect me, had gambled away more than we ever owned, and the man he owed wasn't a banker. He was the kind of man you only whispered about in this city. Dante Moretti, they called him, the devil in a suit. That night, black cars stopped outside our house, engines off, doors opening in perfect silence. Remember my father's shaking hands as he pushed me behind him, and then he stepped out, tall, sharp, a face carved from ice and sin. His eyes found me through the window, and it felt like time forgot how to move. "Your father's debt is mine to collect," he said. Voice calm, deep, absolute, and so are you. I wanted to scream, to fight, but all I could hear was the rain hitting the ground. My father begged, pleaded, fell to his knees. But the devil doesn't bargain with the damned. The men took me to a car so sleek it looked like a shadow, watched my home disappear through the window, the flickering porch light, my father's silhouette fading into darkness. I thought maybe Dante would hurt me. But he didn't. He just sat across from me in the back seat, silent, unreadable. Every few seconds, lightning flashed outside, and I'd catch his reflection in the glass, eyes cold, hands steady. He looked like a man who had already buried 1,000 secrets. When we reached his estate, a mansion on the cliffs outside the city, the gates opened like a mouth swallowing light. Marble floors, velvet drapes, the kind of beauty that only hides monsters. He led me to a study and placed a contract on the table. "Sign," he said, "and your father lives." I stared at the gold ring on his finger and realized it wasn't an offer. It was a marriage contract. My hands trembled as I picked up the pen. Ink bled like blood across the page. When I finished, he looked at me, not cruelly, not kindly, just like a man sealing fate. "From this moment on," he said, "you're mine to protect and to own." They took me to a room upstairs. Soft lights, silk sheets, white roses that smelled like morning. Wedding dress hung on the door, and on the mirror, someone had written in lipstick, "Mrs. Moretti." I touched the glass. My reflection, trembling back at me, 18 years old, trapped in a world I didn't understand. My pulse echoed like footsteps in a hallway with no exit. "This isn't a wedding," I whispered. "It's a sentence." Somewhere in the mansion, I heard piano notes begin, slow, deliberate, haunting, and then his voice again, low through the intercom. "Sleep, Isabella. Tomorrow your life begins again as mine." That was the night my life was sold. The night I stopped being a daughter and became the devil's bride. I didn't wake up in a fairy tale. I woke up in a cage made of silk. The morning after the contract felt unreal, too quiet, too perfect. The room I slept in looked like something out of an Italian dream. Tall windows, lace curtains, subtle, but beneath all that beauty was control. Every door had a lock, every hallway, a camera, and every move I made was being watched. When I tried to open the balcony doors, they didn't budge. When I called out for help, no one answered until a maid entered. Silent, head down, eyes avoiding mine. "Breakfast will be served downstairs." Mrs. Moretti, that word again, Mrs. Moretti, like a knife dipped in honey, followed her through the mansions. Endless halls, paintings of wars, men in suits, women who looked too perfect to be real. And then I saw him, Dante Moretti, standing by the window, sunlight cutting across, his black suit like gold fire. He didn't look at me at first. He just stirred his coffee, calm, deliberate. Every motion felt planned. Every silence felt like power. "You didn't sleep," he said without turning. His voice, deep, low, like smoke that fills your lungs. "I didn't have a choice," I murmured. He turned then, slowly, and when his eyes met mine, my breath hitched, not from fear, but something far more dangerous. You have choices, Isabella, he said. You just have to learn which ones don't get you killed. He walked past me, brushing the air with his cologne. Leather, danger, something darker. He handed me a cup of coffee, black as midnight. I didn't drink it. He smiled. The kind of smile that knows exactly what you're thinking. You think I poisoned it? He leaned closer. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't wake up to coffee. My heart pounded. I didn't answer, and he seemed amused by my silence, like I was a puzzle he couldn't wait to solve. He finally sat, crossing his legs. Your father will live, he said, as long as you follow my rules. I wanted to ask what the rules were, but I already knew. Obey, stay, keep quiet, be the perfect bride for the devil. When breakfast ended, he stood. There's a dinner tonight, he said. Guests from Naples, smile, say nothing. And wear the dress on. I watched him leave, his presence filling the room, even after he was gone. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. He wasn't cruel the way villains are in stories. He was worse. Because he believed he was right. Later, I wandered the halls, ignoring the guard's stares. I found a door, locked, of course, with a gold nameplate that read Private Study. Through the crack, I saw files stacked high, and my father's name on one of them. Froze. He wasn't just keeping me here. He was studying me, every detail, every secret, and yet, when I thought of his voice, calm and unreadable, when I remembered the way he looked at me that morning, I couldn't decide if I hated him or wanted to understand him. That night, the ocean outside was restless, waves crashing against the cliffs below. As I stood by the window, a figure appeared in the reflection behind me. Dante. No sound. No warning, just there. You shouldn't wander alone, he said softly. This house isn't safe. I turned to face him. I thought you were what made it unsafe. He smirked. For a moment his eyes softened. Barely. Maybe, he whispered. But I'm also the only one keeping you alive. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath, but he didn't touch me. Instead, he whispered one final line that burned into my skin like a promise and a threat. Learn the rules, Mrs. Moretti, or bleed for breaking them. That was the first day I saw the truth. I wasn't married to a man. I was married to a storm. By evening, I'd learned two things about Dante Moretti. One, he didn't raise his voice to show power. Two, he didn't have to. The mansion came alive that night. The hallways that had been silent all day now echoed with the sound of voices. Low, male, dangerous men in black suits, women in diamonds, that glittered like tiny daggers. Every corner smelled of power. And fear. I stood at the top of the staircase, wearing the dress he'd chosen, dark green silk that hugged me like a secret I shouldn't keep, when I looked down. I saw him, Dante, standing among his guests, calm and commanding. Glass of wine, he looked every bit the devil they said he was, but under the chandeliers, he almost looked human. A woman whispered near me, "That's his new wife." And the way she said it, with pity, envy, disbelief, made my chest tighten. When Dante saw me, the room seemed to slow. He raised his glass slightly, a signal, maybe a warning, and everyone went quiet. "Gentlemen," he said, voice smooth as smoke. "My bride, Isabella." A few polite claps, a few raised brows, and then the music started again. Business, laughter, lies. It all blurred into one dizzying haze. He approached me, every step deliberate, slow like a wolf crossing a field of lambs. "You clean up well," he said. "You make captivity look elegant." "I'm not your decoration," I said quietly. "No," he replied. "You're my investment." He offered me his arm, and I had no choice but to take it. The heat of his skin bled through the fabric of his suit, unsettling, magnetic. We walked through the room together. Every man bowed slightly. Every woman smiled too long, I realized then. They feared him. Not because of what he said, but because of what he could say. At dinner, I sat to his right. A long table stretched before us. Gold plates, crystal glasses. A feast no one seemed hungry for. He barely ate. He just watched. Every person, every glance, Every lie told between bites. A man across from him, older, smug, made a joke about the new bride, a crude one. The table laughed softly until Dante placed his glass down. "Marco," he said, voice low but sharp. "Do you have a wife?" "Yes," Marco stuttered. "2 children." "Then maybe," Dante said, leaning forward, eyes glinting like cut glass. "You should remember how it feels to have someone you'd kill for." The laughter died instantly. You could have heard a heartbeat in that. Silence, and then he smiled, cold, controlled. "Eat," he said, "before the food gets cold." I stared at him. He hadn't touched his plate, hadn't sipped his drink. He was watching everything. Everyone, like a predator surrounded by prey. When the dinner ended, guests began to leave one by one. Whispers followed me down the hall. "She's just a pawn. Poor girl won't last a month." And maybe they were right. But as I turned back one last time, Dante stood in the doorway, watching me. The chandelier light caught his face, the shadows, the sharpness, the secret softness he tried to, "Why didn't you let him finish the joke?" I asked quietly. "You don't care what people think of me." He stepped closer, stopping just an inch away. "You're under my name now," he said softly. "And no one disrespects my name." Something flickered in his eyes. Not love, not mercy, but something dangerously close. Something human. And for the first time, I wondered if the devil had a heart after all. That night, I stopped asking who he was. I started asking what he'd already lost. In Dante's world, silence wasn't peace. It was surveillance. Days began to blend together inside that mansion. The endless marble halls, the scent of cedar and danger. The way everyone's eyes lowered when Dante entered a room. He didn't have to speak to be obeyed, and I didn't have to speak to be watched. Every morning, I'd find new flowers in my room. Roses, always white, their petals perfect, their meaning unclear, a gift or a warning. Started noticing things, tiny red lights in corners. Mirrors that weren't mirrors. Whispers that stopped the second. I stepped into a hallway. Dante's world wasn't just about power. It was about control. One afternoon, I wandered upstairs, farther than I was allowed to go. The mansion's east wing was different. Darker, quieter, almost forgotten. Dust covered the picture frames. The air smelled of old smoke and secrets. That's when I saw it. A door, half open inside, rows of shelves, files, boxes, and one folder sitting right on the edge of the desk, its label catching the light. Rossi, my father's name. My pulse kicked up. I stepped inside, closing the door softly behind me. The air felt heavier, like it didn't want to be disturbed. I opened the file. Newspaper clippings. Bank statements. Photos. 1. Photo stopped me cold. My father shaking hands with another man. Not Dante. Someone older. Someone worse. A rival family name I'd only heard whispered. Valente, I didn't understand. Why would my father? My chest tightened. He hadn't just made a mistake. He'd made a deal with the devil's enemy. The door behind me clicked. My heart froze. Turned slowly. Dante stood in the doorway. No expression. No surprise. Just that dark calm that made everything worse. "Curiosity," he said softly, "is a beautiful thing, Isabella, until it kills you." The folder slipped from my hands. Papers, scattered like snow across the floor. He walked in, each step echoing like judgment. "You shouldn't be in here. I wanted to understand," I whispered. "Understand what?" He crouched to pick up a photo, his eyes flicking over it. "That your father was a liar? Or that you're paying a debt that was never meant to be paid?" His words hit like a slap I couldn't feel until it burned. "You think I wanted this?" I said. "You think I chose to be your prisoner?" He looked up at me, and for a heartbeat the mask cracked. There was pain there. Real, buried pain. "You think you're the only one paying for someone else's sins?" He stood, closing the distance between us. His hand brushed my jaw, not cruel, not kind, just intentional, and that touch, it terrified me more than his threats. "You're safer here," he murmured. "Don't mistake that for freedom." He turned to leave, but I couldn't stop myself. "Why me?" My voice cracked. "Why did it have to be me?" He paused at the door, didn't look back. "Because your father took something I can never replace. The door shut softly behind him, and I stood there, alone, surrounded by secrets, staring at the photo of my father's betrayal. Outside, the ocean roared louder, like it was trying to warn me. But it was too late. Because now, I wasn't just trapped in Dante's house, was trapped in his past. The more I learned about Dante Moretti, the more I realized he wasn't my captor, he was my curse. In Dante's world, every rule had a purpose, and every mistake had a price. After the study incident, the mansion changed, not in sight. In sound, the silence became heavier, the footsteps outside my room more frequent, and Dante, he stopped speaking to me entirely. For 2 days I didn't see him. No notes, no voice, no glimpse of the man who haunted every corner of my thoughts, just distance. Thick and deliberate, the kind that doesn't hurt because it's cruel, but because it means you suddenly miss the person who broke you. On the third night, I was summoned, the maid, quiet and pale, whispered, "He wants you in the ballroom." The ballroom, a place I'd only seen once. Endless mirrors, crystal chandeliers, gold and ghost light. It felt like walking into another lifetime, and he was waiting there alone, stood beside the piano. Sleeves rolled up, no tie, eyes darker than I remembered. There was no smile. No warmth, just command. "Close the door," he said. I did. "You broke into my study." His tone was calm. Too calm. It made my pulse stutter. "I didn't mean to." "You meant to," he interrupted. "You just didn't think I'd find out." I flinched. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of every secret in this house. "You want to understand my world, Isabella? Then learn this. In my world, disobedience isn't forgiven." He walked toward me, slow, deliberate, like a predator circling something. Fragile. My throat went dry. "Are you going to hurt me?" I whispered. He stopped inches away. For a moment, his eyes softened, almost sorrowful. "If I wanted to hurt you, I'd never touch you." And then he gestured toward the piano. "Sit." Confused, I obeyed. He leaned over, pressing a key, a single low note that vibrated through my bones. "You'll sit here," he said, "until sunrise. No food, no sleep. You'll listen to the silence you create." My heart pounded. "That's my punishment?" "Yes," he said softly. "You crave freedom, so I'll give you silence instead." He walked away, leaving the massive room echoing with emptiness. I sat there, every minute stretching like a lifetime. The mirrors around me reflected my stillness. 100 versions of a girl who no longer knew somewhere in that silence. Something inside me cracked, not from pain, from understanding. He didn't punish with violence, he punished with control, with isolation. With reflection, hours passed. The sky outside turned violet, then black, then gray again. And when dawn finally spilled through the windows, he returned. I was still there, tired, shaking, eyes red from sleeplessness. He studied me for a long moment. "You lasted," he murmured. "Most don't." "I'm not most," I whispered. Something flickered in his gaze. Pride? Amusement? Longing? I couldn't tell. He stepped closer, his hand brushing my cheek. The touch was feather-light, like he was reminding himself I was real. "Don't ever test me again, Isabella, because I don't like hurting you, but I will if you make me." He turned to leave, his voice lower now, almost a whisper against the sound of the rain. "Get some rest. You'll need it." When the door shut, I finally exhaled, the air trembling in my chest, and for the first time, I realized something terrifying. The punishment wasn't meant to break me. It was meant to teach me. Music swells, slow piano, strings creeping in softly like the beginning of something dangerous. He could destroy me anytime he wanted, so why didn't he? Because breaking me wasn't his goal. Owning me was. I told myself I hated him. I told myself he was a monster. But hate isn't supposed to feel like this. Days passed since the punishment, and Dante hadn't spoken a word to me since that morning in the ballroom. No threats, no commands, just silence. Silence that somehow felt heavier than his anger ever did. He watched me, though, always. I'd catch his eyes in the reflection of a mirror, in the glass of a hallway window, in the flicker of a candlelight dinner I wasn't invited to. He was everywhere. And nowhere. One night, I couldn't sleep. The storm outside was wild, wind howling through the cliffs, lightning tearing open the sky. I wandered through the mansion barefoot, drawn by a sound I couldn't explain, a faint melody, a piano. When I reached the door of the ballroom, I froze. It was him. Sitting at the grand piano, shirt sleeves rolled up, fingers gliding over the keys, like they were the same piano, where he'd punished me, the same notes. But softer now, sadder. I should have turned away, should have run. But something in me moved before I could think, stepped closer. The floor creaked beneath me. He stopped playing. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly without looking up. I couldn't sleep. That's not my problem. I didn't say it was. I whispered. He looked up then, and the storm outside was nothing compared to what I saw in his eyes, something raw, something that shouldn't exist in a man like him. Why are you here? Isabella? I swallowed. I don't know anymore. He stood slowly, walking toward me. Each step felt like gravity shifting. The air between us thickened, charged, impossible to breathe. You think you can understand me, he said. You think you can fix what's already damned. I paused, my voice trembling. I think you're not as heartless as you pretend to be. That hit something in him. I could see it. The flicker behind his calm. He stepped closer until the scent of him, smoke, whiskey, danger, filled every inch of my space. You don't know what I've done, he murmured. Then tell me, I said softly. Tell me what you're hiding from. He stared at me for a long, unbearable second. Then, his hand lifted, brushing a strand of hair from my face. The touch was gentle. Too gentle. It burned. Don't look at me like that, he said. Like what? Like I'm something you could love. My breath hitched. Lightning flashed outside, casting shadows across his face, half light, half darkness, and in that moment, I didn't care what he was. Monster, savior, sinner, he was Dante, and I was already his. He hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Then his hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer. Our lips barely touched, a breath apart. I could feel his pulse, wild, heavy, real. You want to hate me? He whispered. Say it. But I couldn't, because the truth was louder than my fear. Closed the distance, and the world went silent. The kiss wasn't soft. It was desperate. Years of fury. Pain, need, all colliding in one stolen second. And when it ended, he didn't step back. He just stared at me. Like I'd done the one thing no one else ever dared. That shouldn't have happened, he said, his voice low, uneven. Then why did you let it? He didn't answer. He just turned away, running a hand through his hair like he could erase the moment. Go to bed, Isabella, he said, before I forget why I shouldn't touch you again. That night, I learned something dangerous. The man they called a monster could still feel, and I was the one who made him remember how. I thought surviving Dante Moretti was the hardest thing I'd ever do. I was wrong, watching him notice someone else. That was torture. It started subtly. A name whispered in the hallways, shadow that lingered too long in the drawing room, servants moving silently, eyes darting toward the ballroom, holding back secrets. Then she arrived. Her name was Valeria, DeLuca tall, elegant, dangerous in heels that clicked, like gunshots on marble floors. Her hair fell like black silk over her shoulders, her eyes sharp as knives. She didn't smile, at least, not genuinely, and when she did, it felt like a warning. The first time I saw her, she was speaking to Dante at the piano. His posture changed, just slightly, subtle enough that only someone watching closely could notice, and I noticed. Who is she? I whispered to myself, my pulse racing. He didn't answer. He just glanced at me once, calm, unreadable, and returned his attention to her. Dinner that night was different. She sat across from him, speaking in low, intimate tones. The words didn't matter. It was the way he laughed, just a little, sound I hadn't heard since the day I arrived. Sound that made my chest ache with jealousy I didn't want to feel. I wanted to run, wanted to disappear into the shadows of the mansion, but I couldn't. Was still Mrs. Moretti, and this was my world now. Later, I wandered into the music room. Dante was there, alone this time. But his hand still lingered over the piano keys. Thought I could hide my feelings. I thought I could pretend. I didn't notice the way he looked at her. "Isabella," he said suddenly, his voice low. Rough, I froze. He didn't move toward me. He didn't reach for me. He just spoke like someone trying to fix a broken silence. "Don't let her scare you. She's complicated." "Complicated?" I asked, biting back the edge in my voice. "You're married to me, and you notice her." He paused. "I notice a lot of things. That doesn't mean I act on them." But his words felt thin. His eyes flicked toward the window, then back to me, and I could see the faint flicker of something I wasn't supposed to see. Interest, nostalgia, danger. The next morning, I discovered a note slipped under my door, elegant handwriting, his. "Valeria is part of the past you don't yet understand. Watch carefully, Isabella. Learn. And survive." I crumpled it in my hands. Survive. That word had followed me since the day he took me, and now it meant something more. Because surviving, Dante Moretti wasn't just about obeying him. It was about surviving the fear of losing him, the fear of being replaced. Realize then, this wasn't just a lesson in control. It was a test of trust, a test of loyalty, and I didn't know if I was ready to pass. The other woman wasn't a threat. She was a mirror, showing me what I could lose. If I let him see me as just a pawn and not a bride, some doors are locked for a reason. Some secrets are buried so deep. Even the devil hesitates to touch them, and yet I found it. That morning, I couldn't focus. Dante was distant, more unreadable than ever, and the mansion felt like a labyrinth, designed to confuse me. I wandered through the east wing, drawn by something I couldn't name. The air was cooler here, heavier. Dust hung in the corners like forgotten memories. Then I saw it. Door unmarked, slightly ajar. I should have walked away. Should have obeyed. But curiosity, that dangerous human curiosity, pulled me forward. The handle was cold beneath my fingers. The hinges groaned softly as I pushed the door open. Inside, rows of shelves, stacked with boxes and folders. Files labeled with names, dates, accounts, and then my father's name. In bold black letters, I froze. My hands shook as I reached for the folder. It was heavy, as if it carried the weight of every mistake my family had ever made opening it. I found photos, ledgers, correspondence, and one thing became horrifyingly clear. My father hadn't just owed Dante money. He'd stolen from him, from his empire. And not small amounts, life-altering, family-ruining amounts. I dropped to my knees, sifting through the papers. Every page made my stomach twist tighter. Understood now why Dante had taken me. It wasn't just debt collection. It was revenge, and I was collateral. Sudden sound made me snap upright. The floorboard behind me creaked. Turned slowly. Dante stood in the doorway, silent, watching, like a shadow he could not contain. "You shouldn't be in here," he said, calm, almost gentle. "Some secrets are dangerous, Isabella. Not because they hurt you, but because they can destroy the I swallowed hard." I needed to know. Needed? He stepped closer. His presence filled the room like a storm. "Or were you just curious?" "Both," I whispered. He crouched beside me, scanning the files I held. "Your father's betrayal. It's worse than I imagined," he murmured. "And you're paying for it." I flinched. "I didn't do anything." "I know," he said. "But pain has a way of finding those it's meant to shape." His words were like fire and ice. He could hurt me in 100 ways, and yet he didn't, for a moment. We sat there, shoulder to shoulder, the room smelling of old paper, dust, and a faint trace of his cologne. I saw the faintest flicker of something behind his eyes. Regret? Sadness? Something human? "I didn't take you to punish you, Isabella," he said softly. "I took you to remind myself why trust is dangerous, and why revenge is sweeter when it's precise." I didn't speak. Words would only ruin the fragile balance between us. He stood, leaving the folder on the shelf. "Go," he said, "before someone else finds you here. And before I decide curiosity is a punishable." I obeyed, but as I left the secret room, I realized something terrifying. I was no longer just his bride, was part of his empire of secrets, and the more I knew, the deeper I fell into his world. That day, I learned the truth. My father's sins didn't just trap him. They trapped me, and they made me realize, in Dante Moretti's world, survival meant knowing everything. Before it knew you, some truths are harder to swallow than lies, especially when the man who holds your life in his hands is the one delivering them. After the discovery of the secret room, nothing in the mansion felt the same. The hallways, the chandeliers, even the faint creak of the floorboards, everything reminded me that I wasn't just trapped in a house, I was trapped in a story. I didn't choose, and Dante Moretti was writing the rules. That night, he summoned me to the library. A massive room lined with books, leather-bound, gilded edges, the air smelling of tobacco, old paper, and something darker. He stood by the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back, watching me approach, like a general awaiting a soldier who had failed the first test. "You've seen the room," he said. His voice was calm, measured, but it carried the weight of storms. "And you've seen the truth about your father." I nodded, unable to speak. The ledger, the photographs, the stolen money. The betrayal wasn't just a debt. It was an act of treachery that cut through families like a blade, and I'd been the collateral. "Do you understand now?" he asked, stepping closer. This isn't punishment. It's justice. Your father tried to cheat me. Isabella tried to destroy everything I built, and you were the currency he offered." I swallowed hard. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I didn't know he would." "That doesn't matter," he interrupted softly. "Ignorance doesn't absolve debt, and it doesn't erase the consequences." He circled me slowly, eyes sharp, calculating. It wasn't cruelty in his gaze. It was something colder. Inevitability. "Your father's betrayal isn't just numbers on paper," he said. "It's bloodlines, loyalties, trust broken in ways you don't even understand, and that's why you are here. Not because I wanted a bride, because he forced my hand." I trembled, the firelight flickering against his sharp jawline, casting shadows that danced like demons across the walls. "You must understand this," he continued, softer now, almost human. "I never wanted to marry you, didn't ask for a bride, but he gave me no choice. And when a man like me is given no choice, he makes the best of the only option available. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream at him, at my father, at the world that had trapped me here. But all I could do was listen, his words wrapped around me like chains and silk, at the same time terrifying, suffocating, strangely intimate. "I didn't take you out of cruelty," he said finally, stepping closer. "I took you because your father's actions left me no alternative. And yet, seeing you here, knowing the truth, I wonder if maybe, just maybe, you'll be more than his mistake." The warmth of his breath brushed against my cheek, and I realized with a shock that the man who had haunted my nightmares was the same man whose presence now made my heart pound. "The debt is real," he whispered, "but so is the chance to survive. The question is, will you?" That night, I understood the full weight of my father's sins, and I understood something far scarier. Dante Moretti wasn't just the man who held my life. He was the man who would define it. In Dante's world, danger isn't an invitation, it's a lesson, and that night, I learned it the hard way. It started quietly, a knock on the study door, soft, polite. I froze, not because I expected anyone, but because in this mansion, every knock carried meaning. Dante appeared moments later, coat draped over his shoulders, expression unreadable. "We have a situation," he said. I followed him without question. We stepped outside into the night, storm clouds rolling over the cliffs. Rain cutting across the May fire burned in the distance. Not a fireplace, not candlelight, a real fire, consuming a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, and I could see the silhouettes of men, masked, armed, running, shouting. "The Valenti family," Dante said quietly, eyes narrowing. "They're testing me, testing us." I realized then that this wasn't just business. It was war. And somehow, I had been dragged into it. He moved with precision, authority, stepping into the chaos as if the world obeyed his every command. I stayed close, barely breathing, terrified and captivated at the same time. "Stay behind me," he ordered, voice low but commanding. "And don't get in the way." The air smelled of smoke and gunpowder. The rain stung my face like needles. Watched Dante issue commands. With a glance, a word, a gesture, men followed. Women feared, and yet he seemed almost untouchable. Why am I here? I asked, shouting over the roaring wind. Because, he said without looking at me, you need to see what it means to survive in my world. We moved closer to the edge of the fire. The heat was intense, the shadows dancing across his face. And when he finally looked at me, his eyes held something I wasn't prepared for. Concern, protection. A warning. You don't understand, he murmured. Not yet. But you will. Gunfire erupted nearby. Men shouted. The fire crackled higher. Smoke stinging my eyes. I wanted to scream. Wanted to run. But Dante's presence anchored me. He was calm. Terrifyingly calm. Amidst chaos. And somehow, that steadiness made me cling to him. He grabbed my hand briefly. Touch so fleeting it could have been imagined. But I felt it everywhere. You're safe, he said, as long as you don't leave me. And in that moment, I realized the terrifying truth. Being near Dante was like standing on the edge of a volcano, beautiful, dangerous, irresistible. The fire consumed the warehouse. The Valenti men scattered, and the night returned to rain and wind. We stood there, wet, trembling, heartbeats echoing in the storm. This is my life, he said, voice low, almost a whisper. And now, it's yours too. I swallowed. The weight of the world pressing down, fear, desire, curiosity, all tangled together in my chest. And yet, I whispered, I still don't understand you. He tilted his head, a small smirk forming despite the firelight. You will, Isabella, and when you do, you'll know that surviving me isn't about fear. It's about knowing why you can't leave. That night, I learned what it meant to be part of Dante Moretti's world, not just as a bride, but as someone tethered to fire, danger, and a man who could destroy me with a glance. Every monster has a secret. Every king hides his vulnerability, and Dante Moretti had a scar he never wanted me to see. The morning after the fire, the mansion was eerily quiet. The storm had passed, leaving behind a damp, misty haze that clung to the marble floors. I wandered through the east wing, restless, haunted by the events of the night before. Heard a door creak slightly. Curiosity, dangerous as ever, led me toward it. It was the training room, a place I had been told never to enter. Inside, Dante was there, shirt sleeves rolled up, hands wrapped in cloth from what looked like sparring. He was alone, moving with precise, controlled motions, a dance between strength and restraint. When he noticed me, he didn't stop immediately, but his eyes flicked to mine, sharp and calculating. You shouldn't be here, he said. Voice calm but carrying an edge I had learned to fear. I couldn't sleep, I admitted softly. He didn't respond. Instead, he moved closer to a mirror. And then, he turned slightly. Flash of skin at his shoulder caught the morning light, jagged scar running from collarbone to shoulder blade. I froze. What is that? I whispered. He stiffened, a shadow passing over his face. Nothing, he said sharply, turning away, but the way he held himself, the tension in his jaw, I knew it wasn't nothing. I stepped closer. It's more than nothing, I said gently. You don't have to hide it from me. He didn't answer. Instead, he moved back, finally meeting my gaze. Everyone who touches my world leaves a mark, he said, voice low, almost bitter. Some leave on the skin, some leave on the soul. You've seen both. I realized then that the scar wasn't just physical. It was a map of battles fought, victories won, enemies destroyed, and yet beneath it, there was pain, a human fragility I had never seen in him. Why show me now? I asked softly. After everything. Why? He hesitated. For the first time, his carefully controlled mask faltered. Because, he murmured, I'm beginning to wonder if you'll stay, even knowing the man behind the Monai. Stepped closer. Our breaths mingled. The morning light, the damp air, the faint scent of leather and sweat. It made him look less like a devil, less like the storm that had claimed my life and more. Real, I don't know if I can stay, I admitted, but I want to, for a heartbeat. The tension in his shoulders softened. He let me see the scar fully, the way it told a story no words ever could. Most people run, he said quietly. Most people fear the man I am, but you're still here, and that terrifies me more than any enemy ever could. I reached out. brushing my fingers over the edge of the scar. Not touching, just feeling the weight of it. It doesn't scare me, I whispered. It makes me human with you. He studied me, eyes dark and unreadable. And for a brief moment, the walls around Dante Moretti fell away. I saw the man beneath, the scars, the pain, the darkness, and the man who had begun to trust me with it. That day, I understood. Something terrifying, Dante Moretti, could destroy me in 100 ways, but the scar he hides was proof that even devils bleed. The past never truly stays buried. And sometimes, it returns in ways that can destroy everything you've tried to survive. It was early morning when the news came. A message slipped under my door. Formal. Cold. I didn't read it at first. Something in my gut told me it wasn't good. Dante found it first. He didn't look at me. He just read the paper. His jaw tightening. Fingers clenching. "Your father's back," he said finally, voice low, steady, but with an edge that made the air in my heart stopped. "What? How?" I whispered. I thought he was gone for good." "Gone doesn't mean safe," Dante said, "and he's coming here. To this city. To this house, to you." The words hit me like a blow. I had survived his debt. I had survived Dante, but my father was chaos in human form. And knowing he was returning meant that nothing was safe. By evening, he arrived. I saw him first in the grand hall, older, grayer, but still unmistakably him. The man who had forced me into this nightmare. The man whose mistakes had cost me everything. Froze. Dante stood beside me, silent as always, watching, not as a husband, not as a captor, but as a protector. "Isabella," he murmured, almost under his breath. "Stay close. Don't trust him." My father looked at me then, eyes wide, almost desperate. "I didn't know. I didn't mean—" "You never do," I cut him off, my voice shaking. "You always leave destruction in your wake." He flinched as if my words were daggers. "I came to fix it," he said. "To make it right." "You can't," I whispered. "Some things can't be fixed." Dante stepped forward then, body tense, presence commanding. "Leave," he said, voice low, deliberate. "Dangerous, or you won't leave at all." My father hesitated. Looking between me and Dante, I saw it. Fear, respect, the realization that the man before him wasn't just my husband. He was a force he had never reckoned with. "This isn't about you anymore," Dante continued, eyes piercing. "It's about her. About survival. About paying the debts you left behind." My father swallowed, the weight of years and mistakes pressing down on him. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't expected. Dante had become more than a protector. He had become the judge, the jury, and the executioner of the chaos my father had sown. "You're not here to hurt her," Dante said quietly. "You're here to witness what happens when mistakes are left unchecked." My father nodded, trembling slightly, and I felt a strange mix of relief and terror. Relief because Dante's shadow loomed over me. Terror because my father's return reminded me of all the fragility of this world. I was trapped in that night. I understood a truth I hadn't seen before. The past may come back to haunt you, but the man you feared most may be the one who keeps it from destroying you. Her father had returned, but Dante Moretti was still the storm. I couldn't escape, and the man who would decide if I survived it. In Dante Moretti's world, every moment comes with a cost. Every heartbeat demands a decision. And that night, I faced my choice. After my father's return, the mansion felt smaller, tighter, almost suffocating. Every room held whispers of betrayal, fear, and secrets I couldn't escape. Dante's presence was constant, not just in the halls, not just in his watchful gaze, but in the tension in the air, in the weight of every glance. That night, I found myself alone in the library. The only sound the storm outside and my own racing Dante entered without knocking, his movements silent, precise. "You look like someone about to make a mistake," he said quietly, eyes dark, unreadable. "I'm not sure I have a choice," I whispered. And it was true. Every decision I made now was tangled in his world. My father's sins and the debts that bound me. He walked closer, each step measured, deliberate, commanding. "Choice," he said, voice low, almost dangerous, "is a luxury you haven't had since the day you stepped into my life." I swallowed hard. "But I have to try," I said, voice trembling. Even if it's just for a moment, I need to decide who I am in this story. He studied me, his expression flickering between something I couldn't name. Pride. Curiosity, Rester, go on, he said. Make your choice. And then it became clear. My choice wasn't between staying or leaving. It wasn't even between love or hate. It was between survival and surrender. I choose to stay, I whispered finally. I choose to survive, but I choose to do it my way. He didn't respond immediately. He just stepped closer, so close that I could feel the heat of him, the tension in his muscles. Do you understand what that means? He asked softly. It means the world you knew is gone. It means the man who commands it has marked you, and it means every choice from now on carries consequences you haven't imagined. Yes, I said, meeting his gaze. Yes, I understand. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he reached out, brushing a hand against my cheek, tracing the line of my jaw like he was memory. You're brave, he murmured. But bravery doesn't make you safe. I'm not asking for safe, I whispered. I'm asking to matter. To have a choice in a world where everything is decided for me. His eyes softened, a dangerous softness. That made my heart race. You're asking a lot, he said, and yet, I think I like that about you. I felt a strange thrill, not just fear, not just desire, but the power of choice. Even if it was a small, fragile power, it was mine. Good, he said finally, stepping back. Voice calm but edged with warning, because the next choice will test everything you think you know. That night, I realized the most dangerous thing in Dante Moretti's world wasn't his power, his anger, or even his enemies. It was the choice he allowed me to make, and the one I had already made. To stay, to survive, and to fight. For me. In Dante Moretti's world, trust is a luxury, and betrayal. Betrayal comes from the places you least expect. The days following my choice were heavy. Every glance, every word, every silence in the mansion felt sharper, more deliberate. Even the servants seemed to move with caution, as though they knew a secret they weren't sharing. And they were right. It began with small things. Missing document here, whispered conversation there. Couldn't put my finger on it at first, but the feeling grew, a shadow crawling through the edges of my life. One evening, I followed the whispering voices to the east wing. Dante had gone out, and the mansion was quieter than usual. I rounded a corner and froze. There, in the dim candlelight, I saw Luca, one of Dante's closest men, leaning over a table stacked and standing beside him. My father, you promised you'd keep her safe, my father said, voice low, and now she's learning too much. Luca's expression was unreadable, but the glint in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. They were plotting. Against me. Against Dante. Against the fragile balance I had been clinging to. What are you doing? I whispered, stepping into the doorway. Both men froze, my father's face, twisted into a mask of shock. Then anger. Luca, however, remained calm. Too calm, Isabella. Luca said smoothly, stepping toward me. You shouldn't be here. I see enough, I said, voice trembling with both fear and rage. Enough to know you've betrayed him. And me? My father shook his head. You don't understand, Isabella. This isn't just about Dante. You're in danger. You've always been in danger. And he doesn't know everything. Doesn't know? I echoed bitterly. He knows enough to protect me from the likes of you. Luca smiled thinly, a predator's smile. Not always. Not from all angles. Some betrayals come from within. My heart pounded. I realized then that Dante's empire wasn't just a fortress against enemies. Outside, it was vulnerable because of the enemies inside. People I trusted. People I cared about. People who you're trying to manipulate me. I spat, to turn me against him. To make me doubt. Luca's eyes flickered with something dangerous. But my father reached out, almost pleading. You have to understand. I only did this to save you. Save me? I whispered, laughter bitter and hollow. By betraying the only person who's ever tried to protect me? The fire in the hearth crackled. Shadows danced across their faces, jagged and merciless, and I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just trapped in Dante's world anymore. Was trapped in a web of lies woven by my own blood. Won't let you destroy this, I said finally, voice trembling with resolve. I won't let you ruin what Dante is protecting or ruin me. They didn't respond, and for a brief, shining moment I knew this betrayal, this danger, this secret plotting, it had made me stronger, sharper, and ready for the storm that was coming. That night, I learned the hardest truth of all. Betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes, it comes from the ones who claim to love you, and surviving it requires courage I didn't know I had. In Dante Moretti's world, words are weapons, and silence can be just as lethal. That night, everything came to a head. The storm outside mirrored the storm within the mansion. Every shadow, every reflection seemed sharper, heavier, almost sentient. I knew Dante had discovered the betrayal, could feel it in the air, in the way the hallways seemed to shrink, in the tension that hummed beneath my skin. He found me in the library. His presence was immediate, magnetic, terrifying, no words. Just him, dark, silent, commanding. "Isabella," he said finally, voice low, almost lethal. "Tell me everything." I swallowed, my chest tight. "I know. About my father," I whispered. "And Luca. I saw them. Plotting, betraying you. Betraying me." Dante's eyes narrowed. A shadow passed over his face. Anger. Calculation. A storm waiting to be unleashed. "And you?" he asked quietly. "Where do you stand in all of this?" "With you," I said, voice unwavering. "I don't trust them. I trust you. I want to survive this. With you." He studied me, the way a predator studies prey. "But there was no predation here, only power, authority, control, good," he murmured. "Because loyalty isn't optional in my world, and betrayal is not forgiven." Then he turned, motioning toward the grand hall. Luca and my father were waiting, their expressions a mix of fear, guilt, and arrogance. I realized then that Dante wasn't just confronting them, he was reminding them, and me, that he was the storm that ruled this world. "You've been playing a dangerous game," Dante said, voice calm but sharp, slicing through the tension. "Do you understand what happens to those who cross me?" Luca's smirk faltered, my father's voice trembled. I only tried to protect her," my father stammered. "She's my daughter." "And in doing so, you threatened her life," Dante interrupted. "And mine." The room fell silent. The only sound was the fire crackling, thunder rolling far away, and the shallow breaths of men who Dante stepped forward, closer to Luca. "You think loyalty is optional?" he asked. "You think betrayal is harmless? You are fools, and fools pay in blood, money, and regret." Luca swallowed hard. "Please." No," Dante said sharply, cutting him off. "You will answer for every lie, every plot, every misstep, and your choice is simple. Confess and live, or continue and die." My father's eyes met mine. For the first time, I saw fear in him, true fear, not the kind that comes from punishment, but the kind that comes from realizing the man he wronged is untouchable. I surrender," he whispered. I'll step back. Leave her. Leave everything to you." Dante's eyes softened slightly. A fleeting flicker of humanity. "Good. That's the only choice that mattered." I exhaled slowly. The weight of betrayal. Fear and tension lifted slightly, but the mansion still hummed with danger. And I realized something terrifying. In Dante Moretti's world, survival wasn't just about loyalty. It was about understanding. The power of the man standing next to you, and trusting him to decide who lives, who falls, and who remains. That night, I learned that confrontation isn't about anger. It's about dominance, and Dante Moretti was the master of both. In Dante Moretti's world, marriage isn't just a union, it's a bond sealed in power, in loyalty, in blood. The mansion was alive that night. Every corridor, every room pulsed with anticipation. Servants moved with silent precision, lighting candles that flickered shadows. Across the marble flew the chandeliers sparkled like cold stars, reflecting a storm outside that refused to die. I stood in the grand hall, dressed in white that felt heavier than silk. The gown clung to me, elegant but unyielding, like the life I had been forced into. I felt every eye on me. Servants, guests, and most importantly, Dante. He appeared at the end of the hall, black suit, tailored perfectly, exuding danger and dominance in every line. His eyes locked on mine, unblinking, commanding, and in that gaze, I felt both fear and an intoxicating pull I couldn't resist. "You're here," he murmured as he approached. Voice low, almost reverent. I am. I whispered, heart pounding. I'm here. With you. The officiant stepped forward. But the words of the ceremony felt secondary. Wasn't marrying in a church. Was entering Dante's world fully. Irreversibly. Every vow I would speak would carry consequences. Far beyond romance. Consequences of loyalty. Power, Isabella, Dante said, sliding his hand to mine. Do you understand the life you're choosing? The blood, the danger, the world that comes with me? I do, I said, meeting his gaze unwaveringly. And I choose you. Even knowing it, a silence fell. The storm outside roared as if approving. Or perhaps, warning, he drew me closer. His presence overwhelming, yet steady. Then swear it, he whispered. Swear it in blood, in loyalty, in everything that makes you mine. I nodded, feeling the weight of the words in my chest. Not just a promise. Not just a union, a declaration of survival, submission and trust. The ceremony was brief, stripped of sentimentality. Every word was deliberate, every gesture heavy with meaning. I repeated my vows, my voice strong despite the tremor in my hands, and when he spoke his, it was as if the world fell away, leaving only us, Dante and me, tethered by something far stronger than love. With this, he said finally, placing the ring on my finger, you are mine, and I am yours, not by law, but by blood. The words echoed in the grand hall, swallowed by the shadows and storm. Realized then that this wedding wasn't about romance. It was a declaration of power, a bond forged in sacrifice, survival and inevitability. Afterward, he pulled me close, pressing a hand to my waist, his lips brushing my temple in a promise both tender and dangerous. This night changes everything, he murmured, not just for us, for everyone who dared to challenge me. I shivered, feeling the intensity of the moment, a mixture of fear, desire, and exhilaration. I had survived my father, the betrayal, the enemies, but surviving Dante, surviving this wedding, was an entirely different kind of test. And so, the wedding of blood was sealed, not just with vows, but with the understanding that in Dante Moretti's world, love and danger are inseparable, and I had chosen to embrace them both. In Dante Moretti's world, peace is a lie. Every empire is built on danger, and every victory comes with a price. That night, we faced the last war. The night was alive with chaos. Flames danced on the horizon, painting the sky red and orange. The mansion shook under distant explosions, and the air was thick with smoke, fear, and tension. Dante stood at the edge of the terrace, black suit clinging to his form, eyes scanning the horizon. This is it, he murmured, voice low, almost reverent. The final strike. I stood beside him, heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had survived betrayal, fear, and my father's mistakes. I had endured the shadows of Dante's world. But now, survival demanded action. You shouldn't be here, he said, eyes piercing mine. This isn't your war. I chose to be here, I whispered, voice trembling but firm. I chose you. I chose to survive it, and with you. He studied me for a heartbeat, then nodded slightly. Good, because tonight, the enemy doesn't ask who stands beside me. They only see a target. The battle began silently. Masked men stormed the perimeter, gunfire cutting through the night, like lightning. Dante moved with the fluidity of a predator, lethal, precise, unstoppable. I stayed close, hidden behind his shadow. Yet every instinct screamed that danger was only a heartbeat. Stay behind me, he shouted, voice commanding, filled with fury. Explosions shook the ground beneath our feet, the taio. Wind carried the acrid smell of smoke and burning fuel. Every move Dante made was calculated. Every strike devastating, and yet, I could feel his focus on me, even in the chaos. Protecting me wasn't just instinct, it was possession, obsession, and a promise. We end this tonight, he growled, taking down the last of the attackers with brutal efficiency. No one threatens my empire, and no one touches what's mine. The final confrontation came swiftly. A figure emerged from the smoke, tall, masked, carrying a weapon far more dangerous than the others. Dante faced him, unwavering, eyes cold and calculating. This ends now, he said, voice calm but lethal. You lose. Or you die. A flash of movement. A gunshot. The man went down. And the storm around us seemed to still. The air smelled of gunpowder, rain and iron, and in that silence, Dante turned to me, eyes softening just enough to remind me that he was human, even when he was the most dangerous man I had ever known. "You're safe," he whispered, drawing me close, "because no one touches what's mine, not tonight, not ever." I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the tremor in his body beneath my hands. It wasn't just relief. It was recognition. Recognition that we had survived, together, against impossible odds. That night, I realized the true cost of survival. The last war had ended, but the man who fought it, Dante Moretti, had claimed me in every way a bride could be claimed, body, soul, and heart. In Dante Moretti's world, survival isn't just about strength, it's about power, loyalty, and the bonds you choose to keep. And after all the darkness, betrayal, and bloodshed, love can be just as dangerous as vengeance. The mansion was quiet, almost serene, as if the storms of the past had finally exhausted themselves. The fires of war had died down, leaving smoke drifting through the streets beyond the gates. I walked through the halls, every step heavy with memory, betrayal, fear, passion, and the lessons Dante had forced upon me. He was waiting in the grand hall, black suit perfectly tailored, eyes sharp but softer than I had of when he saw me. His gaze lingered longer than it had before. Not just ownership, but something deeper, almost human. "You survived," he said, voice low, reverent, dangerous. "We survived," I corrected, stepping closer, together. A faint smile brushed his lips. He extended a hand, not as a command, but as an invitation. "Then let's finish this," he whispered, "not as enemies. Not as victims, but as the rulers of what remains. Together." I took his hand. The warmth of his grip anchored me. Everything we had endured, my father's betrayal, the secret plots, the wars, the fire, the blood, all of it had led to this moment. "Do you trust me?" he asked, voice low, almost a growl. "I do," I whispered. "I trust you." With everything, he drew me closer, our bodies almost touching. Yet the tension between us was electric. Charged with, "Then remember this," he murmured, lips close to my ear. "The empire I've built, the life I lead, it isn't forgiving, but you are the one part of it I would never let fall." I felt the weight of his words, and the truth in them. He wasn't just the man who had taken me as a bride. He was the man who had claimed every part of me, body, soul, heart, and made me stronger in ways we rule it together. I said finally, voice firm. "Not just surviving, but living." He paused, studying me, eyes piercing mine with an intensity that left me breathless. "Together," he repeated, voice softening, and then he kissed me, not gentle, not timid, but a claim, a promise, a fire that spoke of danger, devotion, and an unbreak the world outside could burn. Enemies could fall, and secrets could fester, but in that kiss, we were untouchable. The city lights beyond the mansion glimmered like tiny sparks, mirroring the storm that had been axed. The empire was still dangerous, the world still unforgiving, but we were no longer victims. We were rulers, partners, survivors. And so, the empire of love and blood was ours, forged in fire, betrayal, and war, but tempered by trust, desire, and the choice to stand together. Dante Moretti, the man I had feared, resisted, and survived, became the man I loved, and in his world, by his side, I had finally found my place. The story doesn't end here. If you want to follow every heartbeat, every secret, and every twist in the world of Dante Moretti, subscribe now and stay with us as the dark romance unfolds. Don't miss the next chapter of danger, desire, and the empire of love and blood. Hit that subscribe button. Your story with us has only just begun.